Hey, so due to the recent weapon rebalances in the 12.0 update quite a while ago at this point, the Thrasher is currently the highest DPS slash best SMG in the entire game now. I can show that by some of the math I've done on the screen here. The Thrasher actually beats out the Silent Spectre in terms of total damage output. It's about a 7.3% increase from the Silent Spectre, and due to the fact that it has a lower fire rate and higher damage per bullet, means you'll be spending less ammo doing more damage. That alone is great before you find out the fact that it actually has a much higher accuracy. So the Silent Spectre gets really spray-y, it kind of goes crazy, and your bullets start going everywhere, whereas the Thrasher has a much tighter spread and stays accurate for longer. The only drawbacks is that it has a lower mag size by like 8 bullets or 9 bullets in-game. It's really not that big of a deal. And the reload is like a little bit more, but honestly, because you're going to be doing more damage per bullet, you'll actually not be reloading as often, so I don't even consider that a factor. I have tested these with identical perks. Before we get into it, I do want to mention that the Thrasher does have a scavenger variant, which is the Riptide. If you guys don't know, the scavenger weapons are meant to have identical damage, but a lower durability and a lower cost, which in the end means it's just a more efficient version of the weapon. It's basically the same stats, but if you take the cost divided by the durability, it does actually cost less in the end, so these are better in every single way, except for, in this case, the Thrasher apparently got a 1 more damage buff, so it has a base 31 damage instead of 30, so this is the only scavenger weapon that I'm aware of where they've deviated from that identical damage difference. And I also wanted to note an error in my Riptide video. I tested it with blue perks, and apparently that screwed up everything, because I didn't think it was going to be that big of a difference, but if I can just sort of click over here and show you my math, for whatever reason, I'm seeing a 64.7% damage difference between the Riptide at 136,000 DPS and the Riptide in my video, which was 88,000. That should not have been from blue perks. So investigating this issue, I've noticed that for whatever reason, I have no idea what I was doing that day, but when I recorded the video on the Riptide and potentially the gameplay for it, I didn't have Rescue 2 Ramirez in my lead, which means either I didn't have a soldier build on, or I was using a completely different lead for some reason. I have no idea what I was testing, but you can tell that the 18,000 DPS is not the 12,000 DPS that I had there. And just to show you that I am the exact same account that was looking at that, I can just take her off, put on anybody. Architect Havoc does nothing to your damage. If I go down to my Riptide schematic, it is the exact same 12,081.6 as shown in my video, and for whatever reason that fudged my numbers and my experience with this weapon, so I will be unlisting that video and presenting you with this, seeing as the perks are exactly the same. So you pretty much saw it. The perks on this thing are pretty standard, and I'll explain why briefly. I'm really just more interested in the Thrasher itself. Crit rate and crit damage is preferred, so fire rate and damage is identical damage output. It's going to be the same. You're just going to have to reload more often, and that's kind of the problem. Seeing as you're firing 10.8 shots per second, you're on average going to be critting like 3 or 4 times per second, so there's not really any consistency issues with this. There's not really a reason not to run crit on this thing. I just want to say that if you are going to go damage and fire rate on this, just realize you'll be shooting more bullets, making up for less damage per bullet. So it's just better to go crit in general, but it is an option. And then of course mag size is certainly preferred here, and it's actually really interesting. So damage only gives it about a real world output of like a 15% damage buff, or at least that's what it was for the Silent Spectre, and I expect the numbers to be very similar for this. And that's because after you apply the crit damage and the damage to afflicted and the energy 20% damage, that 30% damage perk only goes to the base damage of the weapon, so all of those other things piled on top of it actually just kind of drown it out, and its overall impact is really insignificant. Coupled with the fact that you're going to have to do away with that mag size perk means you're going to be doing more damage with less bullets to shoot. So oddly enough, if you consider your overall, time spent shooting divided by the time spent reloading, it's actually more damage to just run a mag size perk, ironically. So you'll be doing less damage per bullet, but you'll be shooting for significantly longer, and that will be far more useful in a day-to-day fight than an extra damage perk. Obviously, if you don't believe me and you're kind of OCD about having as much damage as you can go damage. That'll be the most damage per bullet, obviously, but you're really gonna feel that mag size, and I highly recommend going mag size on this. Obviously, the other option is reload. With a 2.3 second downtime, you're really not in need of a reload perk. I think it's better to be shooting more bullets and then, not running out of ammo. But if you want to minimize that downtime and get right back into the fight, then yeah, a reload perk is a great way to go. And that's basically preference. You don't need durability, trust me. I'll link my video on how to get every item in the game. You can absolutely afford these weapons. Don't worry about that. And then stability, you're not going to have any trouble with recoil on this. Obviously, for the 6th perk, you are going to want damage to affliction or or Slowed and Snared. They're both kind of great right now. We always used to recommend Slowed and Snared because damage to Afflicted did, like, you know, barely any damage every second, but nowadays it's been hitting really, really hard, and it's glitched to be lasting forever right now. I theorize that they're going to keep the damage, so if that changes in the future, then, you know, try to adjust my words accordingly, but as long as Affliction is doing as much damage as it's doing now, it's kind of my personal preferred way to go. But damage to Slowed and Snared is perfectly good because it slows down the enemies and gives you more time to shoot them. So depending on which one of those you want to have, you basically want to match your 6th perk with your 5th perk. So damage to Afflicted if you have Affliction, and Slowed and Snared to Slowed and Snared. If you don't have one of these 6 perks, you're in a tricky situation. I would recommend maybe trying to recruit another copy. I did that myself today, actually. I can show you. I went ahead and recruited a bunch of these. I don't want to scroll all the way down here in case I miss it. You can see all of these copies are damaged to Slowed and Snared, and that was not my preferred, so I wasted all of my weapon designs getting Affliction ones, and that's just a personal preference. You can totally go Slowed and Snared, but yeah, I highly recommend pulling a few of these out of the book. Do it as a purple variant, that way you can do what I'm doing and not have to waste your flux checking that 6 perk. That's certainly a preferred way to go about that. And then finally, I just wanted to explain why these 6 perks are so important, and that's obviously the 45% damage buff. It's basically exactly that. You will lose out on 45% of your damage if you don't have that matching 6 perk, so that kind of sucks. But if you really want to make a go of this weapon, and especially if you're in Stonewood or Plankerton, you don't need to be min-maxing, as we say. You don't need to be doing the maximum amount of damage if you're in Stonewood, Plankerton, or even early Canny. If you have this thing with any 6 perk, just go for it, you know? Maybe don't make the perks gold, maybe just make them blue, but if you want to copy at least these top 3 perks, it's going to do absolutely fine, and it'll be a phenomenal weapon. So that's it. Yeah, I'm excited about the Thrasher being the new king. It's kind of a quiet update. I'm shocked that nobody noticed. Literally, nobody saw this spreadsheet and cared about the Thrasher. Everybody just assumed it went from bad to, like, not as bad, but it actually went from a really good SMG that everybody was sleeping on to literally the best SMG in the game. So this is a major update. I'm really shocked that this went unnoticed for so long, but I'm glad to at least bring you guys the news and obviously give you the best perks for it. So if you guys want to support the channel, feel free to use code Mista at your checkout. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you guys enjoyed, and have a nice day.